My name is Christy Roberts, and I'm an artist and educator, an activist, and I engage in something called social practice. And when given this prompt, there is something that the definition of social practice actually took me a long time to think about, and I had to think about it in a way that, I didn't really go to, unlike a lot of other people, I didn't get an education in social practice. I got an education in either more conceptual art making or object-based art making, and so I don't have probably as much like theory and articles to pull from. But what I came up with is the visual, sorry, and now here I have to think about it again. The rendering of the physical and experiential poetry between community, place, ethics, and authority. And I feel like that encompasses a lot of different types of social practice and perhaps even like allows for growth and definition.
All right.
So is this where you, okay.
Okay, well, I can interject too, but I and our audience would love to know what you do with the California Poppy Seed Collective or any other projects that you're working on and how that relates to the definition that you just put forth.
Okay. So I think that the Poppy Project is probably the thing that I do that is most under the guise of social practice. And that really began at a point in my life where I was thinking a lot about the presence of absence and trying to preserve absence as a presence. And what that means is it's kind of like an anti-monumental thinking that maybe the best monument that our generation can leave is no monument. In other words, to leave it like we found it. And so I got really obsessed with these vacant lots that I was seeing everywhere, and I wanted to kind of save them. In the state of California, it's actually illegal to pick California poppies on public land because it's the state flower. And so growing up in California, you kind of like grow up with that as this like thing looming over you, like don't pick the poppies. And so there's some folklore attached to it as well as some truth. And so we just started planting all the vacant lots with California poppies. And as a way to perhaps interject some actual legal action, but more so to inject this kind of visual poetry to garner a connection between the community around these lots and the lots themselves. And it spread, and now there's people doing it who I don't even know, and I don't know where all the lots are. I only know the lots that I do, and so it's gotten to be this actually really cool thing that's grown so far beyond the scope that I ever thought that it could. And it has done that for these lots, as far as getting the community a little bit more involved in their surroundings and looking at place in relationship to their experience of it.
Mm-hmm. So what were some of the challenges that you ran into when doing your project, and what are some of the challenges that you think come up or are inherent to social practice?
One of the things that I think is important is that there's a tendency when someone cares very deeply about helping either a cause or a community or something like that, I think there's a tendency to kind of put the cart before the horse, if you will, and go into a community and say, I'm going to help you this way. And that is kind of bordering on colonialism. And I think there's a protocol for these kinds of things, and there's reasons for the protocol, and it's so that we don't engage in those kinds of behavior. And so, for example, it's actually best to ask the community, or an issue, if you will, if it wants help. And then if it says, yes, we would like some help, then how can I help you? But I see a lot of, I've seen some social practice projects that do the former, where they just go into a community and say, I'm going to do this for you. And I just feel like that's probably more of the same that we've had for, 500 years, and that's enacted a lot of the problems that now we're dealing with, and that we're so passionate about trying to alleviate these issues or address these issues. And so I think it's really important that the process look like the goal. So if your goal is something that is anti-racist and anti-sexist and anti-homophobic and anti-transphobic and helping, not against people with disabilities and all of these things that we know that a progressive world about equality should be, then your process needs to look like that too. And I think that that's the hardest part of doing that. So when I go into a neighborhood and do, and do the lots, I ask the neighbor first how they feel about that lot first, because maybe that lot is owned by that person's son, and they're building a house on it to be closer to their mother, to take care of them or something like that. You really just never know, and you don't want to limit the scope of the community by trying to help the community. So I think that that's probably the biggest issue. And I think another issue is, I think it would be really cool if we all, now there's a paradox, right? Because on one hand, I think it's important to be responsible to the communities that you're working with. And on the other hand, there's the art community, which I've noticed sometimes, different theories and ways of making art, which I don't feel are ever in competition with each other, create a dialogue of competition that I think that we should be more responsible to the communities we're working with than to any particular theory of making or way of doing something. So I also see people getting paralyzed by what will people think of this, and not moving forward with projects that could actually be really beneficial. So I think it's important to not let the what-ifs paralyze you, and be prepared that failure is just a part of the process sometimes. But on the other hand, I don't think that you should act in these communities irresponsibly. So I think there's this paradox. It's a very fine line that you just have to learn how to walk.